So Christina, Acura, Integra, you know, Zosh's car, the car that we've been working on. If you don't know what car I'm talking about, this is video number 4. You need to go back in the playlist and get caught up. But if you do know what I'm talking about, you know that the interior was just sprayed. That's looking really good. That was at the end of last video. Now before I move on to the exterior, I want to put everything on the interior back together. That includes the wire harness, the coilovers, the X-bars, and a couple other things. I don't know where else this video is gonna go, but I do know one thing, it is going.
And now, you're watching If We're Doing Christmas in July, Where Does Hanukkah Lie? Channel of YouTube. Welcome to Bodevision.
Hey, so what is up and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on another video. Now already this morning what I did was painted these two covers black, that one right there, that one right there, put these grommets back on where the ABS sensors used to be going through, but he's not running ABS anymore, so we don't need that. Black is a nice contrast, so I think that looks really good. And then also what we got going on right here, this is the X bar from when I just took it out, and I labeled everything so that way when I'm putting it in, I'll put it back in the exact same way that he had it. And I know a lot of times those outer bars are facing like this, but he has them like that, and I think they're facing one way to get around the seats, and he's not running the seats anymore, so it's all good. He can run them however he wants, and I think they look good either way. So with installing these X bars, I've actually had these same exact bars on my EK hatch a long time ago, back when I had an EK hatch. So I'm familiar with installing these and taking them off, and they're actually a little bit harder than what I would have expected. So the key is, if you can see right here, everything is loose. Now everything is on, but everything is loose. So I know all the brackets are facing the proper direction. Now I'm going to take everything off one by one without messing up the brackets. For example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with the top, since this bracket is in the right direction, right here. So I'm going to take it off, tighten the bracket, then put the bar on and tighten the bar. And I'm going to go around the whole thing and do that. And then it'll all be completely tight exactly how it's supposed to be. And I'm not going to have to strip any bolts or do anything like that. It's already where it needs to be. So we are looking really good, and if you can see the bars right here, that one there, sometimes they're ran like this way and then this way, but like I said, he liked them that way, and he can do really whatever he wants. And if you want to do it a different way on your car, by all means do it that way. So I'm going to kind of shift gears in a little bit. What I'm going to start to get into body work a little bit more. Now when I'm working on body work on a car, I find it to work best to just focus on one area at a time. Don't move on to the rest of the car until I'm done with that specific area. So that specific area that I'm talking about is this rear quarter. Since I already have a little bit of work going on here, I want to get this area finalized, get it primed, and then move on to the next one. And I'm going to do that throughout the entire car. And then after it's primed, I'm going to block that primer. Then the whole car is going to get primed again. And let me not get ahead of myself. Let me just start working on this area. So I'm going to get this masked off because I don't want to put the hatch back on there, because I still got to paint the inside of the hatch. So obviously it makes sense to do that off of the car. So now I want to get this masked off. I don't want to get any dust on that beautiful paint that I just laid down. And we are moving right along. So that's looking good. There's going to be no dust getting in the car. We're not going to have to worry about it from now on. So I want to kind of turn my attention to over here. And if you can see, dent right there, couple little dents right there, So I'm just going to walk you through how I go through the entire process. So the first thing that I'm doing, I have 220 on my DA, and in between the sanding pad and my actual DA, I have this little foam pad, and I just recently started using that foam pad, and I really like it because it gives you a little bit of cushion, get around those edges nice and easy as opposed to having such a harsh edge from the sandpaper. And then we're wiping down some of the excess sanding dust, working the block in there. The block is going to really expose some of those dents. That's what the block is for, is to really find, expose, and then you can see these right here, if you can see that one just right there. And then also in this back area, this is real common for whenever you're rolling fenders to have a little bit of weird spots in the body, and that's no big deal. I'm just following it up with a little bit of filler, going real light with the filler. You don't want to go too thick at all. And then again, the same thing, starting off with the DA to knock down some of the high spots. And then after that, I like to come back, use that block again, make sure I'm getting that area nice and flat and ready to go when we're not going to see any dents, and that's looking really good. So now the next thing that I was going to do was get this area ready to be primed. I was going to prime all over here, come up this way, and just finish off right there. But then I actually pulled these moldings off, and then I was texting back and forth with Zosh, and I think what I'm going to do, and what he thinks is a good idea as well, is we're just going to shave these. So what I got to do, that hole there, that hole there, that hole there, every one of these holes, every one of those holes going down the side, I got to put a little metal plate behind that, weld that in, grind that metal down, and put a little bit of filler over it. So with the cars that I have here right now, that's moldings on, moldings off, moldings off with all the holes. And then if we look at Pepto over here, this is an example of actually those holes being shaved shut. So you see here, no moldings, no holes. That's what we're going for Crustina. So I'm going to start to get some metal cut up, one patch per hole. Go ahead and get them tacked in, and then we'll go from there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now with each one of these pieces, I'm going to go ahead and take my stud welder, put a stud on each one of them. That way I can hold them from the outside, pull it tight, and then weld it with my other hand, and that works really well. So here we go, hitting the first major unexpected issue. Well, I don't know if it's necessarily an issue because of how old the car is, but it's something that wasn't necessarily expected. If you can see these, there's just some base coat, some primer, and then metal. Nothing too crazy going on all of these, but that's where it starts to get weird. And then this is thick body filler, Bondo, whatever it is. So this whole entire area seems like it's been rebuilt a little bit. Real nasty stuff. So with an issue like that, I have two options. One, I could take it all the way back down to metal, but there's no telling where the issue stops and where it starts or how far it goes. For all I know, this entire panel could be full of body filler, and for the tone of this build, for what Zosh wants, for our timeline, for our budget, I'm just gonna have to pull it back as far as I can and then correct it. Besides that, I'm just gonna wanna go ahead and get that metal tacked on there and then go from there. So as you can see now, they're all welded shut, and now I know a lot of people do this, and the way that they do it is they just stuff a whole bunch of Bondo in there with a metal screen behind there and hope that it's gonna be all good. Where the way that I'm doing it with metal behind there, even though the welds look kind of ugly and where that metal was reworked, it was really thin, so I kept burning through, and then I had to build those welds back up. But ultimately, by the time they're grinded down, by the time they're filled over, by the time everything is all said and done, this is going to be a lot better than the way that most people do it. So if you can see, looking pretty good. And then also like this one right there, I couldn't get my hand back there to pull the stud through it. So what I had to do is I just had to keep building that weld, working it really slowly, welding a little bit of the hole, waiting for it to cool down, welding a little bit more, and so forth, all the way until that hole was completely filled up. And then I did one kind of burn in that hole to make sure it got real hot and nice and didn't burn through the rest of it. And that's how I went about doing this. This is kind of long, kind of a tedious process, but it's all good because it's going to look so much better in the end. Now since that last clip, I actually spread the filler 3 more times. Some areas needed it 2 more times and a couple areas needed it a 3rd time. Really the main area that needed it the most was that area in the back right there where it was getting really crazy. I had to do my filler crazy to match the crazy that was already there. Otherwise, the area in the front, these areas, that area was not bad at all. Hopefully the other side is just like the front, and there's not a whole bunch of filler stuffed in there, because that's going to make the process really easy. So one thing about this process that I like is the fact that there's metal behind it. It's not just built out of Bondo body filler and mesh netting like a lot of people do. I know that this is going to last. This is the proper way to do it, and I am definitely happy with that. So besides it being 98 degrees in the shop, working hard, pretty hot, I know it's hotter in other places in the country. I don't really care. It's all good. So the coolest thing about this on this side, now I have to do that on the other side. But as of right now, I'm going to go home. I'm going to have company tomorrow or in the next video, so you'll see that. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like this video, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Do all the stuff. You know what it is, YouTube. Check out the merch. I'm out.